There's a fair amount of child wrangling in the mornings. So a lot of effort is put towards getting the kids ready and fed, and if we're taking the car in the morning or taking the bike, there isn't too much difference, not even in departure time. With the bikes too, it's you always know your arrival time. Usually either keep bikes in the basement or locked out on the porch. There is a bicycle prep period. We usually get the bikes set up in an empty parking spot in front of our place and then load them up with the gear and the kids and then head out. Sometimes there is the scramble of finding proper gloves, or a pair of splash pants has gone missing. Those need to be tracked down.
I don't think there's that much involved with it. There's just a few minutes of gathering all of the gear that they wear. So even on the quite warm days, they've usually been wearing their splash pants and gloves in the mornings because it's still a little bit chilly. But other than that, I don't think it's that different than on days when we would drive.
So my typical day, I'll try to wake up before the kids, try to get my kind of base layer on and, you know, biking shorts and whatnot. And we'll get the kids up, get them tucked into their clothes, and we'll head downstairs and make some breakfast. And pretty good about helping make breakfast, and almost as much ends up in the pan as it does on the floor. But having two kids makes me plan a little more for my riding. I can't just pick up and go whenever I want, and in the mornings it often takes a little more time getting ready because I have to get them ready to go and get myself ready. And having kids and riding just requires a little more planning. Just generally having kids requires more planning.
Where's your seat? Where's your seat? You're on the other side.
Once I'll get them dressed and get them into the van or load my bike on the roof and bring them into the day home, and then I'll usually leave my car there and get on my bike and head on to work.
When I get dressed in the morning, I get dressed in my biking clothes right away, and I pack my work clothes into my pannier. And when I'm ready to go, I just go into the garage, grab my bike, put my pannier on, and head up the road.
And in the wintertime, it can be a little more work to have to, put on waterproof pants if it's wet out, to put on a wind layer if it's really cold out, to remember glasses if it's snowing. None of those things really stand in the way. It's still fun.
My routine in the morning is really pared down. I've been biking for a few winters and I know what I need to do and what I don't need to do. I've cut breakfast out of the morning. I'll eat that at work. I prefer to bike on an empty stomach. And my workplace is so close. I don't need to really do much to get ready for it. I put on regular outerwear, just the normal stuff I would use for walking or driving. And I hop on my bike. I have a pannier and I have a bike basket. I will use those to put my lunch in, any change of footwear that I need. I'll just put that on my bike rack and go.
Something about winter cycling is kind of good experience to kind of center yourself before going to work. It's not often that the conditions are so extreme that you can't get out there and bike to work. I don't really do it for exercise. It'll often be like quite a nice ride. Biking in the snow is, it can be really nice.
I commute by bike because it's fun and it's easy and it's honestly not that cold. Something that would stop me from commuting in the winter is 6 inches of snow. The ice is fine, the traffic is fine, the temperature is fine, but if there's more than an inch of fresh snow, it gets really, really slippery. It's totally normal and easier than driving, easier than taking transit. It's fun, and it's not as cold as you think. Just do it.
I just love biking. I find it really fun. Wakes me up in the morning, helps me feel better about my workday. Commuting by bike in the winter is really exciting. If it's snowy, if there's slush on the ground, if it's a snowfall, it feels like an adventure. I feel like I'm doing something a bit unusual. It's more enjoyable and feeling pretty good about that.
My commute is not just about A to B. It's in the space between that I really try to capitalize on it. It's my little place to reset and center myself. It's a calming space. Nothing would stop me from commuting on my bike in the winter. You just put on more layers. If you want more peace in your life and more happiness, you should ride your bike to work.
Looking at a proper scientific, pragmatic way to measure the value and whether we're getting the improvement that we're looking for in the targets, I think that's critical, because how really can you make any type of decision if it's successful or not? If you don't have these type of things, it just becomes simply opinion and nothing else.
There was so much discussion going on in the city around people and debates about building of cycle tracks. People were thinking there are people who do cycle in winter, and then the other side who said, no, there is nobody in winter and there are just the couriers that use the cycling and there is nobody around here. So it was very interesting, and as I was listening to it, I was thinking, well, this is not really a question of debate. This is a factual question, something that is measurable. We were talking to all sorts of people, including those who had no interest whatsoever in cycling. Basically, we're trying to build a profile of the entire city. We published a paper out of it, and it got a lot of attention. Basically, that's what happened. So when I started talking about it and the results went out, I wasn't expecting that much attention. People were looking at it, and they were referring to it, and they were talking about it. There was nothing to compare our results, and I think that's probably why our survey received so much attention internationally, because there was nothing like that at this scale for a typical North American cold city. And the debate becomes stronger in cities with very cold climate, because there is a part that says we should, and there is a part that says we shouldn't. But the people who are saying that we shouldn't, their argument is that nobody cycles in winter. So it would be a waste of money if we invest in our infrastructure. It would be an infrastructure that's used a few months in a year. And that's what was actually my motivation to see, are there actually people who do cycle? Are we gonna waste our money, or is it actually being used by people? Even people who do not cycle agree that if they had to cycle, they would choose cycle tracks, and they would not want to see ice and snow. And that somehow connects and aligns with what we found before, that our winter cyclists were telling us, if you want to bring more people to the scene, you need to build more separated lanes. That was their opinion. And now people who are not cycling are in a way saying the same thing. If they had to choose, they'll choose cycle tracks. So to me, that says you build it, they'll come.
One thing you find with all kinds of urban cycling, and especially in the winter, is that distance has a lot to do with it. So that it tends to work better in denser cities with short distances, right? There's kind of a sense in Copenhagen, at least, that people will not cycle more than 5 kilometers for their daily errands. That's pretty tough in some Canadian cities. There's a few things you do. I think you make cycling in general more friendly, and you make it safer and easier in the summertime. I think bike infrastructure in cities is a huge part of that. So we have to have that infrastructure. We need to maintain that infrastructure in the winter. We need to make it safe and easy for everybody. And I think as cyclists ourselves, we need to get out and we need to enjoy winter. There's some great urban initiatives in Canadian cities like Winnipeg and Edmonton to sort of get people out of their houses in the winter. Winter festivals, winter parties. All of these kinds of things make winter more accessible, make cycling more accessible, and I think will get people out on their bikes.
Bikes here could work, but there's not much space on the streets. The city has not been built around bikes, it's quite obvious, but I don't see a problem, especially since I hear that there's not that much snow. And snow usually reduces the size of the streets because they push them aside and the cars start, getting more into the lanes and all that. So it makes biking harder. But in Calgary, with the Chinook and the fact that you don't have that much snow, this city would probably be very good for biking in the winter.
Council asked us to identify a network of separated bike lanes, what we call cycle tracks, and they approved that network to build these cycle tracks, to unveil them, to have the network connected to the existing 7th Street cycle track. So this will be a game changer in terms of getting more people cycling and giving the people who are really on the fence about cycling enough ammunition to give it a try. And I think once they try, they'll find that it's completely awesome. And the ability to connect to the river paths and all our wonderful bridges is just, it's mind-boggling how good our system is for the off-street, but now we'll get it on-street, and so it'll come full circle now.
Started commuting by bike back when we worked at a different location, and I ditched my car because the route was taking forever, and I saw people biking along my route. So I figured I'd give myself some time and try it. And at that time, I knew nothing about cycling. I was biking on horrible streets. It was a horrible experience, and then finally, I pulled out the Calgary bicycle map and then looked at where a marked bike route was, and then followed that and ended up loving it. I was like, this is too easy not to do. What have I been doing for how many years? So ever since then, I've been pretty committed to cycling throughout the summer and shoulder seasons, and then this year we're like, let's continue. We like this way too much to stop.
In order to afford the opportunity for people to use their bicycles, that you need all of the infrastructure in place to do so. So it's not just having the cycle track, but there needs to be a safe place for people to be able to leave their bicycles. So if we have insufficient bicycle parking, then we need to look at enhancing the bicycle parking.
Let's speak about it more broadly in terms of where people can park their bikes. when they're going somewhere, right? A lot of our big downtown office towers that are being built have 600 stalls in them. And these are significant bike lockup stations.
Cycling also has like a big aspect of convenience. You really do just want to park your bike right outside that restaurant and not walk another block and a half to get there. But we would certainly like to see that kind of cycling infrastructure that just makes it as easy as possible to use our bicycles.
Providing the appropriate stations, lockups, facilities, bike locks, whatever you want to call it, is really, really important to building successful cycling infrastructure. You know what? You can call 311 as a business and request a bike lockup, a bike lock, and the city will come and install them for you. And it's dependent on what kind of business you have, but it is an incredibly easy service that we actually don't promote enough, and we need to do more of it.
Our roads are not going to get any bigger. So we really, really need to work on more efficient ways to get people moving around, circulating, and bicycles and cycle tracks are actually one of the cheapest and efficient ways to do that. There are people that have business models that are based on our mobility and transportation standards of 30, 40, 50 years ago, where we were incredibly vehicularly dependent. The trick is to work with businesses in a proactive manner once the problem is identified to see how you can get around it. I also think it's a lack of just general understanding of how people's consumer behavior and shopping behavior has changed. We have long-time, well-established businesses that were built around a vehicularly dependent model of business. And that's been a bit of a divisive issue in the community. Anytime you have a piece of infrastructure like this that goes into an area, you're going to have conflicts. And yes, there were conflicts with the cycle tracks.
So back when City Council was debating the idea of appropriating some money to develop cycle tracks here in the downtown core, that's when we started engaging with the issue, and that's when we started taking a look at cycling from a business perspective. Because traditionally, as a Chamber of Commerce, we like to talk about taxes, we like to talk about regulation, we like to talk about the development of our energy resources and pipeline infrastructure. Nonetheless, City Council was looking at spending some money on this, and we wanted to take a look at it and see if it was a worthwhile expenditure. A funny thing happened in that process, and we actually discovered that there's quite a strong business case rather, for cycling infrastructure. So first, it's about quality of life and the attractiveness of Calgary as a destination for labor. Folks who are considering a move, you have a lot of options to choose from, whether it be Calgary or New York, London, Toronto. We're in a global competition for capital and talent, and you want to do everything that you can to make sure that your city maintains its competitive edge and enhances its livability. And we found that a lot of potential folks, especially at the younger generations, were interested in cities that had amenities such as cycle tracks or other community or recreational amenities such as that, that made Calgary a great place to live. And so for that reason, it made sense to invest some money in cycle tracks to develop that. And by and large, there was a fairly receptive audience among the Calgary business community to spend this money and develop the infrastructure in a way that would accommodate cyclists and accommodate a lot of their workforce that were coming to work via bicycle.
So when the cycle track came up, it posed a very interesting opportunity for us to increase the number of people that could theoretically travel through the area. So based on that, we were quite intrigued by the notion. And then through doing research throughout North America, we found that really what you're doing with a cycle track is you're able to, from a business perspective, is that you're able to push more people past a storefront than what you would normally be able to do. So currently right now, we're actually pushing 900 people a day past these businesses more than what we were able to do before.
The role of the BRZ and my role is to promote the area, the business area, our main street or our high street. And a vibrant main street, it can't be successful if it's an arterial, solely an arterial for vehicles. one of the overall goals of the BRZ is to bring people here and not cars here.
The neighborhood is seriously lacking. It's great for recreational riding because we've got the pathways along the river, but for commuting, it's non-existent. Apparently, we have a cycle lane that goes down 9th Avenue, but we're supposed to share with buses.
It doesn't help businesses to have 4 lanes running down 9th Avenue. It's better for business to have fewer lanes, slower traffic, irritations to drivers, that they have to slow down and not use it to commute as a commuter route to connect from downtown to the suburbs.
I think that would be also a huge improvement for business too. I know a lot of people argue with me about there not being enough traffic coming through the neighborhood or that there might be parking problems, but I actually think the neighborhood would be much nicer to visit if it was more pedestrian friendly.
I have noticed an increase in cyclists whipping down the sidewalks on 9th Avenue. That makes me really mad. Because I feel like I'm an ambassador for cycling. I don't want to infuriate pedestrians. To me, that's an outcome of not having the right infrastructure. The demographic that is really kind of emerging in Calgary from this economy that's based on one resource. That there's a new demographic. They are buying apartments with condos with no parking. They are the demographic that is going to be determining how we get around in our cities. And I think that demographic wants to walk and they want to bike and they want to take transit. And so that's what the city has to do.
The conflict that had happened in city council and everything, it was because it was this or nothing. And we need to balance it out and have different approaches and be flexible. And I think if that occurred, there'd be a lot more acceptance for it. I think now that the track is done and the counters are in, I think there'll be a new renewed focus on executing the strategy throughout the city. Winter cycling again becomes a big controversy. And it's the return of how many cyclists and the cost to clean it. And as you know, last year it was, there were staggering numbers for the downtown cycle, the small portion that we had to do the custom removal. And administration now said they have a more progressive and a cost-effective way of doing it. So we won't know until this winter happens of how that pans out.
It's becoming more the norm. What's changed is it used to be, when we did 7th Street, we had special equipment, we had a contract just to do that one piece of road. Now it's just part of what we do. And sidewalks, once upon a time, were like that. Now sidewalks are just sort of what we do. What we're doing is about giving people choice. The big thing is about creating a great city, and honestly, it's about a city that gives people a great quality of life. And a part of that quality of life is saying that I want the opportunity to ride my bike to work or to university or to, over to meet some friends. Giving them the opportunity to do it in a way that's easy and safe. And to do it in the wintertime would just be ideal.
I speak to members of the business community who still have some challenges with the cycle track, and what does it mean for parking around their building? What does it mean for their employees' mobility? If there are employees that are not using bicycles to come to work, what does it mean for traffic around their building? And I've also talked to people who live in the downtown core and in the Beltline and get to hear from them what it means from a sense of community to have the cycle track. And I think that's an aspect that I don't know that a lot of people hear about, or that voice is particularly loud in the city of Calgary.
So this will be a game changer in terms of getting more people cycling and giving the people who are really on the fence about cycling enough ammunition to give it a try. I mean, the City of Calgary can do a lot of things to improve cycling, but I think it's really up to citizens, advocacy groups, nonprofits to really carry the reins into the future. And government can only do so much, but citizens involved in civic organizations can do a lot more. And so whether it's becoming an advocate or turning your advocacy group from a nonprofit with just volunteers into a group that has paid staff, that's doing programs, that's working with city staff more, that's really up to the citizens of Calgary if they want to take it there. And if they have a bigger voice, they'll have more say in the matters that happen at City Hall.
I think seriously 20 years ago in Calgary that those two things are so integral that they have to be planned together. How the form of the city drives the transportation system that you have to build to serve it. And if you don't build the form right, you force people to travel in a manner which becomes unsustainable. So we did a plan called Route Ahead that you might have heard of. It's a 30-year strategic plan for transit. We're doing a plan right now looking at the 30-year plan for walking. So the other piece of the puzzle was, what are we going to do about the cycling network? There's really four main modes of transportation at the city. There's driving, which most people are familiar with. That's about 85+% of the average daily travel. Walking, it's about 10% of the average daily travel. Public transit usage, and then cycling. So cycling is the smallest percentage of the major modes, but a small percentage of a big number can still be significant. How do we take cycling from, say, 2% to 4%? Doesn't sound like much, but in the downtown core, when you have 150,000 jobs, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, that's actually thousands of people. If we want people to cycle commute, we need to build a network to accommodate that. We need the routes that match where they're coming from and where they're going to.
Complete streets is something that I brought forward well over a decade ago, and it was controversial, surprisingly, at the time, and it took us a really long time to get it right, work with the development industry and get it passed by council. But it's looking at streets for all users and treating all users with respect. And sadly, Calgary hasn't really been considering other users besides vehicles. We plan for vehicles beautifully. We're masterful at it. But our ability to understand the behavior of pedestrians and cyclists has been less evolved. And so we've got the policy now, and we're now implementing it.
Yeah, the Complete Streets policy is designed for a couple of areas, and mostly right now we're focusing on business locations, BRZs, where we're focusing on what the street should really look like, plus how far back should it go within the street in terms of density, etc., to support the local businesses, and reshaping the streets to be able to adapt to the three modes, and that's cycling, motorists, and pedestrians. Change always is an issue. It's divided depending on what community. Some are a little more acceptance of change, and some are very resistant to any type of change at all. So depending on the community, it can be very, very challenging. The bottom line with Calgary is because the way it was designed, and we're so large, it's designed for a vehicle, and it always has been. And now by adjusting and introducing policies that look towards the pedestrian mode and the cyclist mode, that change is at times very difficult for different communities to accept.
Cycling strategy definitely drew a line in the sand. I mean, the cycle tracks that we're building, the complete streets. I mean, what it basically said is that cycling's a for real and necessary fact of life in the city we need to build. The next city is really about complete communities networked by mobility choices beyond just the private automobile.
We have the Calgary Transportation Plan that talks about respecting the pedestrian, cycling, other modes of transportation, as well as private automobile. We then needed to go and develop these enabling policies in order for us to figure out what did this mean. But it's really basic stuff. It's looking at the street for all users, and that we certainly got the space to share. And so how do you implement that? How do you design it so that it accommodates all these users and treat each Calgarian with respect, regardless of how they want to travel around the city?
It's more of a patchwork, I think, when I think of it anyway, in terms of the inner city, and some of them are more complete than others. And it's very expensive to take a bad street and turn it into a complete street on an existing street. It's easier for us to do it in a new community, and we're doing a way better job of it. That said, we are looking at building complete streets in a more thoughtful manner as properties redevelop, and then as we tear up roads. So the pushback is in the cash money that it takes to build this, and it's very expensive. But absolutely necessary, and we've got to remember that it's our businesses and non-residential property taxes that are the goose that lays the golden egg in this city, and that we need to support that work.
The most important thing that we're doing is we're building a large network of cycle tracks, several kilometers of cycle track in a networked fashion. And it's really interesting the politics of how that emerged. 2010 to 2013, we had a certain council, and then council changed in 2013. And so the incoming council really inherited this cycle strategy and that policy objective, and hadn't been the authors of it. And the character of council had changed enough that there were a lot of questions as to whether this is something we should be doing. And we had money allotted from 2011 that we were starting to spend by 2013 on dedicated cycle lanes. And the plan at the time was to build a cycle lane on one street, and then another one, and then another one. And there were a lot of questions on this council as to whether that would actually work.
The practicality, the expense of it becomes a controversy. And now we're doing snow removal, paying this large money for 8 people. And you get those type of comments right away, is that the best use of our tax dollars?
Amazing. The snow and gravel removal has been amazing this year. Again, since I have the cycle track on my route, they've been so good. The city has been so good about removing the snow. In the past winters where I've been biking, I tended to bike in the car ruts, just because that's where there wasn't as much snow. It was slippery and cars honked at me a lot.
I was pleasantly surprised my first year that they plowed and cleared the pathway, so that was kind of an eye-opener for me. So that always felt like a bit of a luxury. And then later on, learning more about the history of how the clearing of the bike lanes in the city of Calgary actually started was very interesting.
The pathways, nobody even thought about clearing them in those days. And so I started out riding in the winter on the pathway, but first big snowfall, it was impassable essentially. Nobody was even thinking about the possibility of the pathways being cleared. It was a major challenge. If it snowed a lot, you couldn't ride that day. I didn't ride every day back then because there's days you couldn't. And I remember writing a letter to the city of Calgary, and I said, is there any possibility that you might consider extending the pathway clearing that you do along the Bow River to some of the other pathways? The answer I got back from the city is, it's very dangerous to ride in the winter, sir. You should not be doing this. And what I would suggest to you is you should join and get a membership at Lindsay Park there, the Talisman, and use our facility. In other words, just don't do it. And also I was very much kind of on my own at that time. There's no organization I knew that was kind of lobbying the city to get the pathways cleared. So there was probably 3 or 4 winters there where a group of us would get out there when it snowed. We'd be attempting to clear the pathway. In some ways it was a joint effort because the runners were also very keen to have it cleared to shoulder ice. Like, it's impractical. There's no way that a bunch of 6 volunteers could do that, but we were trying to send a message to the city. Yes, we are motivated. So quite frankly, that is the number one thing that makes it possible to cycle year-round in Calgary, is that pathway clearing. So
any marked bike lane is cleared within 48 hours of the snowfall ending. But essentially any bike lane that we install is on a major road, and so the major roads are arterial and collector streets. And because those carry a lot of vehicles and often carry transit vehicles, they're already a high priority snow clearing street. We use a variety of tools to help clear the snow on our cycle tracks. We have a Bobcat tractor with a blade on it that can help clear the snow. If it's a light snow event, our crews actually will use a street sweeper, and so they can actually just brush in the snow into the device and haul it away somewhere. They also treat snow and ice with one of their trucks that kind of sprays a light layer of gravel out, and they can do that at the same time that they're putting materials down on the roadway. They can just aim their sprayer slightly towards the cycle track and treat it. So our crews have done a fabulous job over the past couple of winters of figuring out how to do it really inexpensively and efficiently. And so I have no doubt that they'll be able to use these tools on our pilot network and to a level that Calgarians feel safe.
If you're not from Calgary, you would know this, but the city doesn't clear any of the neighborhood roads. And so if it's not an arterial road, there isn't going to be a plow running over it maybe all winter. And so that poses a huge challenge for most people, not just people on bikes, but people in wheelchairs and people with walking devices like canes or walkers. Everybody that has a mobility challenge is even more challenged.
The implementation has been spotty. Our snow clearing needs to evolve in order to accommodate both pedestrians and cycling. So when we're clearing the cycle lanes, we often push the snow into the path of the pedestrian. So it's not really working for anyone except the vehicle. And gravel as well is a real hazard. We'll have to evolve our processes in order to ensure a safe trip during the winter. And it's a constant struggle.
In terms of cycling infrastructure, it covers much of the route that we're taking. Of course, that's all painted lanes and sharrows. It's great to have the traffic calming, but the way that it makes the traffic and the bicycles interact is a little less than ideal.
If there could be any infrastructure changes made that would make my life easier, it would probably be some smoothing of some of the pathways. I don't need a distinct barrier between me and traffic. My only request would be to people is to treat me the same as a vehicle. If I show up at a light, just go through, don't wave me through. I'd prefer if I'm equally entitled to use this, most roads the vehicles are, and personally I'd like to be treated that way.
There are people who do cycle in winter, and they are not necessarily the spandex, hardcore. They're just lots of them. The majority of them are just regular commuters. Another interesting thing that I found that was again very surprising to me was people's tolerance to cold temperature. So we were asking them, the question that we asked from winter cyclists was basically this: how cold does it have to get before you stop cycling? First of all, there was a big group of people that were on their does not matter. That was a big surprise. But the majority of people actually fell under -10 and lower. That was very interesting, which tells you the people you have here, at least in Calgary, I can talk confidently, temperature does not affect their decision to cycle or not. That was interesting to me.
So we actually looked at cities that had average temperatures in the winter roughly close to Calgary's, well below zero for several months during the winter months, where they saw their ridership decline a bit, but there was still a steady and consistent level of ridership on those cycle tracks, which justified the public expenditure in the first place. So I think it was a bit of a red herring to say that it wasn't worth spending this money in developing this infrastructure because no one would use it, because we're such a cold city, because the experience in cities almost as cold as Calgary proved exactly the opposite.
I don't go hard or anything, just enjoy it. The best days are actually when it's snowing and it's just dead quiet on the bike and there's nobody on the paths, and it's very enjoyable. You actually dress the same way and you don't have to overdress, and once you start cycling a couple hundred meters, you warm up just fine. And actually the trick is not to overdress and get all sweaty.
We did have some cold days and some snowy days and some slippery days and some days where I wanted to cry and days that I have been super, super happy and excited to be at work on my bike.
So far I haven't run into too many days where I wouldn't feel comfortable biking. Yeah, this is November 7th. It's currently about 12 degrees. I'm wearing shorts, people are wearing shorts. Behind me there's a wedding and they are in strapless gowns. So this is quite often what happens in winter in Calgary.
For the last 2 winters, I haven't been able to ride maybe 6 days total because of the snow. If it's -25 and dry, I will bike, but the snow is an issue and it hasn't been a problem lately. That said, it was super mild this winter.
The past few years, the winters have been really mild. This winter, it's barely even felt like winter commuting.
Oh, the recent winters have been very, very mild. Normally, for even a heavy winter in Calgary, really you only get 4 or 5 days that have active, fresh snow on a busy road. It's been a really mild couple of winters.
Our own attitudes towards winter have a big impact on cycling, and I think this has instilled in us almost a fear of winter. We have a impression of it that it's worse than it is. I think we're irrationally afraid of it. Part of my journey in this winter bike world was to sort of get outside and learn to enjoy winter again. And it's some things as like skiing or snowboarding, and it's as simple as getting outside for a walk in the middle of winter. And I realized at the end of it all that all these things sort of come together to make winter biking a great thing, and something now I really love.
Why did I start riding in the winter? I thought, why stop? It's a beautiful way to start your days, to get on your bike and ride to work. I always look forward to my rides, both going to work and then coming home too. It's just a great way to relax. I mean, there's so many benefits. Number one for me is the health benefits, the exercise, and it's actually mentally very relaxing and very healthy that way too, I think. Then there's the economic benefits too. Like where I work, parking is about $1,500 a year, and I've been there for 31 years, so I've never paid for parking, and I guess I'm up to close to $50,000 I saved myself just in parking.
If you're thinking about going for it, just keep riding until you can't. Don't make some big plan to I'm going to do it the whole way through the winter. Don't even do that. Just try to go to the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and next thing you know, it might be March, and you've made it through.
Kind of the best way to start and end a work day. You wake up, opportunity to get some fresh air and exercise on your way to work, and then on the way home, you have that opportunity to decompress.
People like talking about the weather in Calgary, and when they go from home to car to work to car to home, they don't really experience the weather.
I just want to share to other people that's easy to do. You just have to give it a try. I think that's overcoming that barrier of being really scared or feeling like I couldn't do it.
I really enjoy winter biking for the same reasons I enjoy summer biking. Gets you outside and a little bit of exercise. It's good for the environment, obviously, but also it's a little bit faster than transit.
Start on a mild day, start on a sunny day, realize that it's really not that hard. Biking can make your day so much better, so give it a shot.
There's nothing bad about the cycling. Yeah, there's only good stuff about cycling. Everybody should cycle.
Most of the time it was just so nice that I was like, why don't I just start biking? So we got some set of tires and I started 1 day a week and then 2 days a week, and then by the end of the first winter I was almost 5 days a week, and then now I've biked every single day, and we actually did get rid of our cars.
I like being outdoors in the winter. I like the fresh air. It's the free exercise, basically. I like meeting up with friends who bike in the winter as well. We meet for coffee every Friday morning, and just seeing people I know on the pathways.
I love biking by the river because that's a lot of part of my commute by the Elbow, and I love seeing the snow on the river and the ice on the river, and then it's clear one day, and then the stars are so pretty above us, and no one appreciates that when they drive.
It's just like a great way to be active and get exercise in, especially when you're busy, and it takes the same amount of time as taking the bus anyways.
I'm almost an old lady, but anybody can do this, and it's a great deal of fun.
And I've seen beautiful, beautiful sunrises, and it looked different every day. I'm never stuck in traffic. I have a 16-month-old daughter. She comes with me every morning. One of her first words was bike and helmet for helmet. And so she goes in the chariot, and it works all winter.
In the winter time, I try to get the kids out on their bikes as often as possible. I just try to make sure they have good gloves, good gear, and that makes it easier for them to enjoy the riding in the winter. There's a couple of little challenges with kids on bikes in the winter. A lot of the side roads aren't as clear as the main roads are, and so we end up having to ride on the sidewalk. It's important, I think, to teach your children how to politely ride their bike on a sidewalk, which is very slowly, and the pedestrians have the right of way. I think it's important for children to learn the rules of the road and how the road works. I think your children will be safer if you can teach them and show them how to ride properly on the road from a young age. I mean, I wouldn't send my 9-year-old out riding up and down the street without me right there. I want him to know which side of the street to ride on. I want him to know how far away to stay from parked cars. I want him to know what he should do when he gets to a little traffic circle that can sometimes confuse cars about where the right-of-way is. And the best way to do that is to have discussions by doing it rather than pointing at these things from the sidewalk. Try to get them just on the bike whenever we can, because we're trying to show them that it's not a big deal to hop on their bike any time of the year. Around this neighborhood, there's a whole bunch of kids who ride their bike to school in the winter. You can see whole groups of them, 10 and 20 even of them. They'll wait at street corners for each other, and it's really cute to see in the morning all those kids just riding their bikes to school. No matter if it's -20 with a foot of snow on the ground, they're still riding. And I'd like my kids when they get older to be one of those kids.
Up until a couple years ago, that was a pretty tough thing to do, or something that was sort of reserved for the brave and what you might call the hardcore cyclist. And now it's all about just people who are sort of wearing plain clothes, who have, a clunker bike or whatever, but just kind of want to get from A to B. It's sort of normalizing it and bringing it back into the mainstream as a normal mode of transportation.
People that say war on cars are people that are worried about change in a larger thing than just cars. The vitriol of this debate is about more than just cycling, and it's about change. And change is a tough thing. But when we think about what we're actually doing, we're spending $7 million, which is fractional money when we're talking about a $4 billion budget that we spend every year. And we're taking away 3 lanes in a downtown that has upwards of 150 lanes of cars. And so if people think that this is the war on the car, then I think that they've got they've got other problems in their life. The broad benefits that these very small investments have in our communities and on our citizens are immeasurable and will be successful. And these numbers will grow in the future. And I'm not just, I know this. I know this with confidence more than I am confident in other things. People are biking more. The Winter City argument is a lame argument for why we shouldn't be investing in this. And we see the benefits of it all over. So really excited.
It makes a ton of sense. And the question is, how do we entice more and more Calgarians to make that lifestyle choice? People who sort of make the argument that, well, we can't have real human habitat urbanism in Calgary because we have winter, I just call bullshit, fundamentally. The idea that Calgary is exceptional because of its winter is ridiculous. We can do urbanism, we can do pedestrianism, and we can do cycling like anyone else. We have to account for our climate, but in no way is it a deal breaker for cycling or any of the other projects of urbanism in Calgary.
There's really no reason not to cycle. We were a little hardcore back then, I'd say. Most of the people doing it were really into the outdoors, like mountaineering and stuff too. So it was a pretty natural extension for us to ride in the winter, but now it's so much easier to do. Just wondering, like, what, these guys must be crazy. No, like, I'm not crazy. It's actually, once you get going on it, it's great exercise, you stay fit, it's good for the environment, it's good for your mental health. I mean, I can't say enough about it.
My commute is really short, but it's all downtown. So I bike to work on streets. Now that there's the cycle track, I bike to work mainly on the cycle track.
My route to work is really direct. I go out the house, around the corner, and then down Elbow Drive, just straight all the way. It's a bit under 30-minute ride. There's no bike lane on Elbow Drive. There are no signs welcoming cyclists at all. I find the speed of the road is really manageable. The cars don't go too fast, and they seem to respect me and give me space.
I think I started where most people did, and I just tried to find the perfect winter bike. I had a really nice summer bike that I loved, and I rode that through the winter. Near the end of the winter, it had corroded out my bike. Winter can be really tough on bikes. There's lots of ice, there's lots of salt on the road. It really corrodes your bike out. So I tried all kinds of bikes after that. I tried city bikes, I tried road bikes, I tried mountain bikes, just trying to find the perfect sort of winter bike. What I needed and what I found was this $50 used mountain bike that I stumbled across at a bike stop. I bought it, stripped it down to just very basics, and I've been riding that happily for years now. So that told me that there's no such thing as a perfect winter bike. There's all kinds of different winter bikes. You sort of have to find what's right for you. And there's so many different kinds of winter, so many different kinds of commutes, so many different kinds of riding, that you really have to sort of figure it out on your own.
If you're finding you're really getting into it, then there are equipment options out there that can make winter cycling a lot more comfortable, that are pretty specific to various types of bikes that are out there. So things like studded tires and pogies and good lights and fenders, and those kinds of things can make a really big difference to making winter cycling really enjoyable. Really, when it comes to winter tires, there's really sort of two options. One would be to go with something that just maybe offers you, maybe like even a traditional mountain bike knobby tire can be enough for most people. With studded tires, we when we've got people that, let's say they run studded front and back, what we recommend they do is in the spring is mark them front and rear when they take them off and just rotate them in the next season, and you'll get perhaps 4 or 5 years out of a set of tires. Some fun items called pogies or bar mitts. Slip this onto your handlebar, and then you can reach inside it and you can keep your hands nice and warm and still have access to your brake levers, your shifters, all that stuff. So that's really popular. Also key is fender sets. So a lot of people just kind of think that they're really great for keeping you clean, which we all know they do. But even more importantly, they keep your bicycle clean, and so you basically keep a lot of the road grime from spraying all over your bike and wearing your bike out faster. Perhaps wearing out your rims, your drive line, your brake pads, all that stuff. So if you're considering winter cycling, you definitely want to look at installing a full set of fenders if you can, because they're worth their weight
To encourage people to ride to work, I think they just kind of need to get out there and do it. I think that Bike to Work Day is a great initiative. It lets people know that it's a viable means of transportation. I think once people start doing it, they see the advantages, and it's just lots of fun.
It was out of the blue, never been done before. A lot of people thought we were going to get maybe 15 cyclists, because that's all that ever ride in the city of Calgary during the winter, the crazy folk. And we had over about 75 on our first inaugural year. Last year we had over 130, so every year it gets a little bit bigger. We also tied last year with Montreal for the most people pledging to ride on Winter Bike to Work days.
Every year we see more and more people, and we continue to see this trend. And as the city also increases infrastructure and number of also like community organizations continue advocating, we will see an increase of number of people cycling, hopefully also infrastructure. So it is not only this community, it is everybody. And you know, as everybody works together, then we are able to create, you know, like a more vibrant community in this city. You do not need to be a superhero to do it. It's something that everybody can do, and it's something that it is, you know, we live in a winter city, so it just makes sense to go ahead and ride your bicycle.
Good experience to kind of center yourself biking in the snow is it can be really nice.
It's totally normal and easier than driving, easier than taking transit. It's fun. Just do it.
If it's snowy, if there's slush on the ground, if it's a snowfall, it feels like an adventure.
And I'd like my kids when they get older to be one of those kids.
Nothing would stop me from commuting on my bike in the winter. You just put on more layers. If you want more peace in your life and more happiness, you should ride your bike to work.